The rain had started falling lightly as Amara stepped out of her office building that evening. The streets of Lagos were busy as usual, filled with honking horns, impatient drivers, and pedestrians trying to escape the downpour. She quickly adjusted her handbag on her shoulder and raised her hand, hoping to catch a taxi before the rain grew heavier. Within minutes, a small Toyota Corolla stopped in front of her, its wipers moving back and forth in a rhythmic sweep. She glanced inside. The driver was an older man with a calm face. Relieved, she entered the back seat, shaking water off her umbrella, and gave him her destination. He nodded silently and drove off into the traffic. The interior of the taxi smelled faintly of air freshener, and the soft hum of the radio played a popular Nigerian song. Amara leaned back against the seat, grateful to finally be on her way home after such a long day. But as the car joined the expressway, she noticed the driver was unusually quiet, his eyes fixed on the road, occasionally darting to the side mirror. At first, she thought nothing of it. Lagos drivers were often tense and impatient, but as the car sped past familiar turns without slowing down, her sense of comfort began to slip away. "Excuse me, sir. That's not the route," she said politely, leaning forward. The driver gave a small smile, muttered something about traffic, and assured her he knew a faster way. She hesitated, unsure whether to insist, but the rain had grown heavier outside, and the streets looked flooded. Maybe he truly knew a better route. She forced herself to relax, but her eyes remained fixed on the windows as unfamiliar streets began to unfold around her. Then she noticed something else: the way the driver kept making quick phone calls. He would lower his voice, speaking in Yoruba, and end the calls abruptly whenever she looked up. Her heart skipped a beat. It wasn't unusual for drivers to answer calls, but his tone, the rushed whispers, and the glances in the mirror made her uneasy. She pulled out her phone and sent a quick message to her friend. "In taxi, not sure about this driver. Taking strange route." She hit send, but just as she tried to place a call, the line cut off. The network bars on her screen flickered, then dropped. She shook the phone and tried again, but it remained lifeless, stuck on no service. Amara's palms began to sweat. She knew Lagos was notorious for taxi scams and kidnappings, stories she had read countless times online, yet she had never thought she would be caught in one. She shifted uneasily in her seat and tried to remain calm, her mind racing through possible actions. Should she demand he stop immediately? Should she try to open the door and jump out? But the rain outside poured heavily, and the streets they passed were deserted, lined with warehouses and old buildings she didn't recognize. If she jumped, where would she run? She cleared her throat and tried to keep her voice steady. "Sir, please stop here. I'll come down." The driver pretended not to hear. She repeated herself, louder this time, her voice edged with fear. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel and said firmly, "Relax, madam. I told you I know this route." His words offered no comfort. Instead, her fear deepened, her heartbeat drumming so loudly in her chest that she could barely hear the rain anymore. She looked out the window desperately, hoping to see a familiar landmark, another car, anything. But the road stretched on, lonely and dark, with only the heavy rain and the occasional flash of headlights from oncoming traffic. Her phone still showed no signal. Panic set in fully now, and she felt her throat tighten. She thought about her mother, who would already be waiting for her to return home. About her friend who might see her last text and wonder what was happening. About the countless news stories of people who entered taxis and were never seen again. By the time the cars slowed down at a junction she didn't recognize, Amara's fear had turned into trembling. The driver made another call, speaking hurriedly, his voice low but urgent. She couldn't make out the words, but she felt certain they had something to do with her. Her instincts screamed at her that something terrible was about to happen. She tightened her grip on her handbag, her mind racing between fight and flight. Then, with the sound of the rain hammering against the windows and her own heartbeat echoing in her ears, she realized the chilling truth: she might never reach her destination. When Amara failed to return home that night, her mother's unease grew into panic. She had called her phone repeatedly, but it rang endlessly without an answer. By morning, her friends from work also confirmed they had not seen her since she left the office. The last message she had sent, the one to her friend about the strange taxi route, became the only clue they had. Within hours, word spread quickly through WhatsApp groups. Instagram posts, and frantic phone calls. Her colleagues rushed to the nearest police station, while her family begged authorities to take immediate action. The Lagos police swung into motion, treating the case with urgency because of the cryptic message she had left. They tracked the number of the driver through the ride-hailing platform she had used, but to their surprise, the data was false. The car's details had been cloned, the name registered under a fake identity. Even more alarming, CCTV cameras along her supposed route showed the taxi leaving the main highway, driving toward a dimly lit industrial part of the city. At one point, the cameras caught the chilling detail the taxi stopped briefly, and within seconds the license plates were switched. Whoever was behind this had done it before. The revelation sent waves of fear through the family and city alike. The newspapers were already beginning to carry headlines of a missing young woman, sparking conversations about the rising cases of abductions linked to fake taxis. Social media was filled with hashtags bearing her name, strangers rallying behind her story, demanding answers. But while many feared the worst, her younger brother Chaik believed she was still alive. He clung to hope, insisting Amara was too smart to fall without leaving a trace. When police reviewed her last phone data before it went silent, they discovered an unusual app installed on her device. It was a hidden tracker Chaik had helped her set up weeks earlier after she complained about safety in Lagos. The discovery gave investigators a new lead. As the tracker's last signal was analyzed, it pointed to a remote warehouse area near the outskirts of the city. It was a place known for abandoned factories, but also rumored to be used by criminal groups for their activities. The police began a quiet surveillance of the area, but what they uncovered shocked even them. Patterns of vehicles came and went at odd hours, some carrying goods, others with passengers who never returned. Amara's disappearance was no random incident. It was tied to a larger syndicate that specialized in trafficking, using unsuspecting drivers to lure victims into their network. Unknown to her family, Amara was very much alive inside that warehouse. She had been forced into a dimly lit room where several other captives sat silently, fear etched on their faces. The men running the operation moved around with confidence, clearly used to handling such situations. But Amara was not as helpless as they assumed. She remembered her brother's insistence on the tracker, and though her phone had been taken from her, she knew the device had already pinged her location before it went off. All she had to do now was stay alive long enough for help to come. The syndicate, however, underestimated her in another way. Amara was a junior IT analyst at her firm, with a strong background in cybersecurity. While locked in that room, she observed everything the way they communicated. The devices they used, the patterns of their guards. She noticed that one of them carried a poorly secured Wi-Fi hotspot device, something she knew could be exploited. Her mind, though shaken with fear, worked quickly to process possibilities. If she could get hold of it, she might find a way to send a silent signal out. Back at home, Chaik pleaded with the police not to delay, fearing time was running out. His sister's instincts and intelligence, he argued, meant she was fighting from the inside. The officers leading the case admitted they had never seen such careful coordination by kidnappers before. Every move pointed to a powerful ring, one that operated with resources and connections deep inside the city. It wasn't just about ransom. It was organized crime at its peak. What no one outside knew yet was that Amara's disappearance was about to unravel the hidden layers of this syndicate. She wasn't only a victim waiting to be rescued, she was the key that could turn the tables. The night dragged on endlessly for Amara inside the warehouse. She could barely sleep on the cold concrete floor, her mind swinging between hope and despair. Every sound outside the locked room made her jump. The men who guarded them seemed too sure of themselves, moving around with weapons and barking orders at each other. They had no idea that her last phone ping had already set the police in motion. She clung to that hope like a lifeline. When morning came, the syndicate grew restless. They had received instructions to move some of the captives to another location, and Amara was among the chosen ones. She was blindfolded and led out with two others. The rain had stopped, but the ground was muddy, and she could feel her shoes sink slightly as they walked toward a waiting vehicle. Her heart pounded harder with every step, but she reminded herself of something her brother always told her. Fear is normal, but panic kills. She forced herself to stay calm and observe. One of the guards made the mistake of tossing her handbag into the trunk without checking it properly. Inside, tucked within the lining, was the tiny tracker Chike had installed. Though her phone was gone, the device remained active. The moment the car started moving, the tracker sent out a fresh signal, alerting the police surveillance team that had been monitoring the area all night. It was the break they had been waiting for. Meanwhile, inside the vehicle, Amara's mind raced. She remembered the hotspot device she had spotted earlier in the warehouse, and in those tense moments she realized she had memorized its network ID. If she ever regained her phone, she could use it to tap into their unsecured communications. But for now, survival was the only goal. She pretended to be weak, slumping against the seat, hoping the kidnappers would underestimate her. The convoy of 2 cars moved deeper into the outskirts, but before they could reach their next location, flashing sirens cut through the silence of the early morning. Police vans emerged from both ends of the road, blocking their path. The kidnappers cursed loudly, trying to make a quick escape. But within seconds, the road was swarming with armed officers. The car Amara was in screeched to a halt, and the captors panicked, pulling out weapons. Gunfire erupted, sharp and deafening. Amara and the other captives dropped to the floor of the car, their hands covering their ears as chaos unfolded around them. The standoff lasted only minutes, but to Amara it felt like hours. She heard shouting, running footsteps, and the crashing of doors as officers dragged the men out of the vehicles. When the dust settled, the kidnappers were in handcuffs, some bruised, others bleeding. A police officer pulled open the car door and extended a hand to her. "You're safe now," he said, his voice firm yet gentle. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she stumbled out, too shaken to speak. For the first time since that terrifying ride began, she felt the weight of survival pressing heavily on her chest. Back at the warehouse, another team of officers stormed the compound. They found more captives inside, frightened but alive. Computers, fake documents, and piles of confiscated phones lay scattered across the rooms. It was the biggest breakthrough the police had seen in months, proof of an organized network that had evaded capture for years. Amara, though trembling and exhausted, became the most valuable witness. She gave them crucial details how the men operated, their careless use of unsecured devices, and the patterns she had observed during her captivity. By morning, the entire city was buzzing with the news. Headlines screamed of the girl who vanished in a taxi but returned alive, bringing down a dangerous syndicate. Social media exploded with hashtags celebrating her bravery. Photos of her reunion with her family went viral, her mother clutching her tightly, her younger brother hailed as a hero for installing the tracker that saved her life. Nigerians debated furiously about the state of security in the country. But one thing was clear: Amara's story had struck a chord. Her ordeal did not end with freedom. Nightmares haunted her, and the memory of that lonely ride replayed in her mind over and over. Yet she chose not to remain silent. Weeks later, standing before cameras at a press conference, she spoke firmly about her experience. She urged other young women to be cautious, to trust their instincts, and to take safety seriously in a city where danger could hide in plain sight. Her words resonated, turning her from a victim into a voice of awareness. The kidnappers faced trial, and as details of their operation surfaced, Nigerians were horrified by how many lives they had ruined. But thanks to Amara's courage and the persistence of her family and the police, the syndicate's power was broken. The same journey that had begun as a simple ride home became a battle of survival, a story of fear transformed into triumph. And though the memory of that rainy night would stay with her forever, Amara walked forward with her head high, a living reminder that sometimes courage is born in the darkest of places.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more teachable and inspiring folk tales by FE.